This embossed badge is created with an emboss layer effect combined with a gloss contour and a layer mask. Let's switch to the beginning file. I'll double click to the right of the type layer and I'm going to add a bevel and emboss. So to start out with, I'll choose Show All Effects and then turn on Bevel and Emboss. The style that I want to use is emboss and the technique I want to use is smooth. Now everything else you might want to vary according to the size of your image, the type that you're working with and your own personal preference. But these are the values that I came up with. 365 for the depth, the direction is going to be up, the size will be 24. I'm going to soften that by 3 pixels. I need to turn off Use Global Light because I need different lighting angles in this composition. The angle in this case is going to be 127 and the altitude will be 37. Because I want brighter highlights, I'm going to increase the opacity of the highlight mode, and I'm also going to reduce the opacity of the shadow mode to 30. So that is the basics of my embossed type. But what's really going to bring this to life is the gloss contour. Currently we have a linear contour, but when I change this to a cone contour, then it looks a whole lot more glossy. But I feel like I want to moderate this effect slightly, and I'm going to do that by using a layer mask. If I zoom in, what I'm aiming to do here is just have the edges of the effect taper off more subtly than they currently are doing. And to do this, I will command click on the type layer to load the type as a selection. I'm now going to come to the select menu and expand that selection by 12 pixels. Of course, exact mileage will vary. Adjust the amount according to the size of your image. For context, my image is 1536 pixels wide. Now I want to remove from this expanded selection the shape of the type itself. So I'm going to Command Option or Control Alt click on the type layer. And I want to make this selection into an inverted layer mask. Option or Alt and click on Add Layer Mask. And what we now have is that on the layer mask. So I'm going to now edit the mask itself by double clicking on it, and I will change its density to 80% and increase the feather to 3 pixels. If I disable the mask by shift clicking on it, you can see that's not making a whole lot of difference. I need to go one step further. Double click to the right of the layer name, and I need to make sure in this case, sometimes you want this checked, sometimes not. In this case, layer mask hides effects. So it's actually masking the effect as it reaches the edge of the letters. Now, in combination with that, to achieve the overall end effect, I'm also going to turn on some effects that I already have applied to the framing rectangle beneath. Essentially what I did was copy the bevel and emboss to this framing rectangle and modify it. I also added an inner shadow. A problem I ran into was that the interior edges just look a little bit too sharp. Once again, I used a layer mask to address that problem. It's currently disabled. If I shift click on it, you can see what that's doing. Obviously it's making it smaller, but it's also curving the inner frame. Then we need some effects that are applied to the background polygon, and we have a combination of inner shadow, inner glow, satin and gradient overlay. And just to give the whole composition a bit more presence, I also have a gradient overlay applied to the color fill layer at the background. Finally, let me point out that the top 3 layers, the type, the framing rectangle and the background polygon, are all in a group. I'll collapse that group, and I'm now to the group going to apply some shadows. I'll double click to the right of the group to bring up the layer style dialog box. I'm going to come to the styles option and load a predefined style. So in here I have saved all of the styles that I've been using, and this one is called, if I can find it, Emboss Shadows. These styles, by the way, are all in the exercise files folder. They are called styles.asl. And the one that I'm after, embossed shadows, it just applies 2 drop shadows with different angles to that whole group. And there's our finished effect.